So how did it go from movie to potential TV series? Like how'd that even start or happen? What was the inspiration?
Well, I mean, we had talked about it over the years, but while Stuart was doing the book, nothing was really happening. We were working on our own things, and then I remember having that phone call with Nancy and her guy Kevin, and it just sort of came organically through that conversation, because I've always thought that it would be way cooler if we could stretch this thing out, and not be so confined by. And even when we made movies in the past or written things in the past, you're always looking for this. When can you come into this scene at the latest, and how can you get out the earliest? So
right.
With this, it's like, fuck that. Let's go. Just go. Have the scene be how the scene needs to be, with being concerned about time. You gotta be concerned about length of scenes and things of that nature. But instead of cutting, you can add. Characters. Scenes were added, ideas were added. So that conversation we had, and just even the idea of Wilderness of Mirrors and turning this into a multiple season thing, beginning with this always begins with MKUltra, is I don't know, change the game for me and how I feel about this whole project and where it's going. So good stuff.
That's great.
Yeah.
I think not that I've had any input in this really, but for a long time I've been quite irritated by the format of film. A lot of these modern films and things that you see that are kind of compressing stories, and you feel like they're trying to hit all these things and not doing it right. And along comes Netflix and these long form arcs. They're fantastic. You can really explore and
yeah. And I remember when we first started thinking about this as stretching it out. Your first instinct was, well, let's go back to the older scripts, and we'll look at all the stuff that that we had to cut out for length and to make it that 120 pages, and I realized that that's not the way that we should do it, because a lot of that stuff, when it's, even though there was sort of a mandate that you're trying to follow and it shouldn't be over a certain page length, it turns usually out for the better. As evidenced by a lot of like director's cuts that I really actually don't like, because I like the original. There's some that I really do, but some it's so clear that those scenes were cut for very good reasons, and now they're just back in, and it's like, and so we didn't want to do that. Now there was maybe a few things here or there that we were able to add back in that we really liked, but for the most part, the cuts were good ones. And so we realized, well, we can't just go back and pillage our old super long drafts. We're going to have to really create brand new content. And it's got to be good, because it's got to match the stuff that's, was a tight 120 pages and got us, meetings in Hollywood and got people really excited about this. So that was quite a challenge, like coming up, going beyond what we had and creating new scenes, some new characters, expanding characters, changing some characters. Bree in the movie script and in the graphic novel is mid-20s white girl, and we changed her into same name, different spelling, but she's a fiery, really driven woman of color, and she's got a brother named Cleveland who wasn't her brother. And that would have been a strange pairing, but they could have both been adopted, I guess. But so once Bree became Black, and we realized, well, it's all of a sudden we started toying with the idea of making Cleveland, who was just a small little side character, who worked at the police station, and Seymour could go to him to get some records pulled up or whatever. Suddenly, like I really like Cleveland in the original. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that. He was cool, yeah. But now it's like well, let's give him a bump. Let's give this kid a raise, So now he suddenly started beefing him up, and then thought, well, why don't we make them brother and sister? That could be a cool dynamic and really add some tension to that it's like a triangle now, because Seymour and Bree living together. Her brother is just somewhat kind of bad influence, and she's trying to stay clear of trouble, and she's got political aspirations. She's working for Dianne Feinstein, which is an idea Sample brought, which I thought was awesome. And but Seymour and her brother kind of pal around, and they got a history, and so that just became really interesting. That also allowed us to kind of bring in the Black Panthers and Beef and was it Huey Newton? Is that his name?
Huey Newton.
Yeah, he makes an appearance in the script, which is awesome.
Sure does. That's my favorite new scene.
Yeah, no, totally. So it basically became, and then we were able to really explore a lot of like some backstory with Chase meeting Jimmy, the Chinese woman he fell in love with, during the Korean War, and how they even, some stuff we'd kind of alluded to in the original movie script. Now we're able to just kind of go like flesh it completely out. So it's great. I think the idea of longer form for this was perfect, because there's
no, it's great.
Not even to mention the fact that there's so much other stuff that this program, when you really start, peeling back the layers, I mean, there's so much more. I mean,
And then also the wonderful thing you've also got is the comparable decades. You've got the 56 San Francisco and the late 60s and 71, 72 San Francisco. You've got entirely different concepts of San Francisco. You've got San Francisco that's full of neon at one point in the 50s. It was one of the most neon strewn, judging by behind me here. This is one of the San Francisco streets, one of the most neon rich cities in America. And then by 71, a lot of that had been pulled away. So totally a different atmosphere. It's one of the reasons we're really into film noir set in San Francisco. But one of the things you reminded me of that was really funny, because Huey Newton's not in the version I worked from. But if you look,
free Huey sign in there, isn't it? Yeah,
it's right. There's more than one. If you look closely, it's what's his name is walking down the corridor to bust those guys who are making his LSD at the very beginning. If you look on the wall, there's a panther, and it says "Free Huey," because it's the graffiti of the day,
Sure.
And that was in at the beginning. That was right at the beginning. Put that in. But one thing I put in retroactively was I discovered that there was a protest in, I think it was 69, 70, against the newspaper, The Examiner. They had published some kind of anti-gay rhetoric, and so a number of gay people painted their hands pink and went to the building and stuck their handprints all over the building. So for a brief period, the building had all these like pink hands all over it, purple
awesome.
hands.
Yeah.
So if you look at the new version of the frontispiece, you see the front of that building now as Seymour's running to work and he's going, I'm late. If you look closely, there's like all these little handprints.
That's awesome. Yeah. See, that's an example of these, the chicken fat,
Yeah, you go. Yeah.
It's almost that's almost something Banksy would have done, some kind of crazy.
Back in the day.
Yeah. Just that, that place and time, San Francisco, late 60s, early 70s, just so rich culturally and politically, and the people there, the music, just so much to draw from and so much to explore, which we were able to do some of that in the longer form, introducing like Huey Newton and then Diane Feinstein and stuff that even Stewart touched on in his graphic novel without even knowing about what we did with this other part, because there's a pretty impressive, amazing time period just to last those few years there, so
we'll see.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm just trying to think if I've ever seen it before. Like, we've seen movies that take place there, or even like, your Dirty Harry in San Francisco there, but they explored what we're trying to explore with this show and this so
pretty big scope. Yeah.